Hey, folks, and welcome back to the Unlimited with Exceptions Health and Tech podcast. I wanted to say broadcast, but that's not quite right. Health and Tech podcast. Our host and resident expert, Amanda Nystrom, CEO and National Health Board certified health and well-being coach. Yes, that's a mouthful. That's what you get from academics who don't know how to market. Is here today, and she is going to talk about why change is the most difficult, terrible, and unsustainable thing in existence. Amanda, what do you got for us today?
Well, thank you, JD. I think you got the title a little wrong. Change isn't bad. Change is good, but we have a tendency to not be able to sustain change because there's an underlying problem with where our motivation's coming from.
Well, what is the most common motivation for change?
Usually peer pressure.
Okay. So why is that unsustainable?
It's extrinsic. So there's actually two types of motivation.
Hold on. Hold on. I appreciate the 50-cent word. What's the 10-cent word?
External.
External. Okay, because it's external. It's an external pressure. Okay.
Yes. So there's two different types of motivation. There's intrinsic, internal, essentially, which is the type of motivation that you do for something that actually brings you fulfillment or joy. It's something that, like learning a new language, you want to do because it simply motivates you to do it. And then there's extrinsic motivation, which is you're trying to get an external reward, or the kicker here is you're trying to avoid punishment.
Oh, and then why? I mean, we've all been punished a good deal in our life. So why is that the kicker?
Because we're often using that as a motivator for us changing rather than using something intrinsic. So it's like we're relying on our avoidance of pain and suffering in order to try to get us to do something, whether it's for our health or for any other area that we're trying to make change.
Well, but hold on. I mean, external changes happen all the time. I mean, a parent disciplining a child, peers pushing people out of their peer network because they just don't reach up to whatever milestone. So, I mean, why is change because of that versus intrinsic change better or worse?
I appreciate that you brought that up because there are benefits to both intrinsic and extrinsic, internal and external motivation. There's benefits to both. However, the problem is when we're trying to make changes upon changes and it's only fueled by external forces, right? When it's only coming because we're fearing punishment. And so, what gets in our head is not the fulfillment and the joy of achieving whatever it is. It's about, I'm trying to avoid negativity. And that in itself is not self sustaining.
Okay, but why?
Well, one, it affects your mindset, right? If all you have in your head is, I have to do this because I'm avoiding this other thing, it, it's almost like it self sabotages you. It gets in your mind as a constant negative feedback circle. And your mindset then talks to your discipline. And then it's like this downward spiral.
Okay, I'm trying to grasp this because, I mean, certainly negative, feedback it never feels good, right? And when you're hard on yourself, that certainly doesn't feel good. A very common one is, you know, I'm so stupid, I can't believe I did that again. Whatever the I did is, right? It's a habit that formed, you know better, but for whatever reason, it happened again. But isn't that kinda just how it goes? I mean, we're talking about life as a whole, the positive feedback loop is I mean, let's be honest, it's reserved for the hippie and the rich, right? I mean, the average person is sitting here getting beaten down all the time to the point where, their existence is victimhood. I mean, so how do we overcome that? How do we make it sustainable and to move beyond that?
So you brought up several good things there, and the one thing that I really wanna hone in on is small wins. If you want to rewire your brain for positive thinking, because you said, we're constantly kicked down, we're dealing with victimhood, and it's not just in our own minds, it's what we're told by society is the accepted format of our lives. Is if something hits the fan, then we mire in it because that's what other people lean toward. It's almost like this attitude of misery loves company on a gigantic scale. And what's different about making sustainable changes and overcoming that is to rewire your brain. And you do that via small changes, small wins, and and you do it with dopamine, but not the way that you think that you use dopamine.
Well, I mean, okay. Now you've touched on quite a few things here because we started this episode with, change isn't sustainable when it's done through negative external pressure. Okay. Or that's why it's very hard. But what was it? I don't remember the guy's name, but you teach a rat to do the same thing over and over because the rat ends up fearing the electric shock or whatever, right? That's a very real biological response that you can affect change in a way that is positive for everyone, largely except for yourself, right? You're affecting a change within yourself for everybody else. So that's number one. And to me, man, this is deeper than I was expecting. So, are you saying is the question really how to affect positive change, right? Because you can change people's behavior. I mean, you can whip them into compliance. That's what society generally does at this point, right? You have people that are stuck in a feedback loop of I'm the victim and I deserve, but they're not willing to make the hard choices to not be a victim and to say, I earned, right? So where the science come in here? What is the goal of the science that you're trying to share?
Well, I think you are correct in that the title of why we can't sustain positive change or productive change is much more on the nose here. Um, and the science is that we have a tendency to establish, which we touched on a couple podcasts ago, establish habits that work for us in a moment of weakness or in a moment of chaos, right? When something's hitting the fan. And then we build on those as a way of life. And when we get into this motivating factor of, oh, we want to change, but it's being influenced by external factors, and we don't actually question, is that intrinsically motivating, or am I doing this for the benefit of I don't wanna get fired, or there's a negative connotation to it. It actually trains your brain just to go back to the defaulted, established neural path. And so then we don't create new neural pathways. We don't experiment. We don't look at how things could be done in a way that is fulfilling and, and sustainable.
Basically, we keep our head down.
We mire in what works at the
Right.
time.
You're keeping your head down. You're mitigating risk, right? Because positive change or productive change involves a lot of risk.
Yes.
So you're mitigating risk, and that even though you feel bad or may feel bad, even though you may feel bad, you feel safe.
Yeah, under your rock.
Yeah, under your rock, right? Even though you may feel bad, you feel safe. You are under your rock. And the rock is a very comfortable place to be. But, as it's health and tech, how does this apply to tech, right? Because it certainly, I mean, I have my own opinion, but how does this, if we're affecting productive and positive change, how is that affecting my health as a technical professional? And let me be clear to those who are listening. Sure, it may seem obvious to you, but there are nuances here because, again, being under a rock is a very safe place.
I think the main thing is that in tech, we get so focused on if it's not broke, don't fix it, or let's fix something just to make it better all the time. And it's to the point where
We don't know any people that do that. Our entire company is based on let's fix what doesn't need to be fixed.
and there's polar opposites, right? You can have the both of those things in the same person about a different project, or even the same project depending on how they show up that day, right? There's this mindset, and it has a tendency to bleed into how we treat ourselves outside of work. And 90% of our life is the journey, and it's optimizing things, and it's making changes for the better. But if we put, to use your term, to put our head down and put the rock over, we're not going to end up making changes, even if we end up hitting a wall, even if we get burnt out, even if we are faced with a health diagnosis and we don't know how to face it because doctors don't give you a plan. They give you what you need to achieve, right? We are inundated with all of this stuff, and we don't know how to make those positive changes. And what I really want to bring to this is that it's as complicated as it is, it's a really simple process, and I think that we have a tendency to overthink it and to value other people's opinions of what fulfillment and joy means to us, rather than us actually establishing that for ourselves.
Okay, so what is a change that you have made in your life recently, that you would consider a positive and productive change that was a simple change?
I started getting up earlier so that I could work out almost every day of the week.
Okay. So eh, you work out almost every day, well, pretty much every day of the work week. Um, so what did that take? Why was that simple? Because I plenty of people, right? In fact, look, let's be honest, that wasn't a simple change. That was a change that you had to dedicate yourself to. The first day of it, I remember your response. The first day of it was, I regret my decision. Right? This isn't the first time, right? It's not like you haven't had an exercise regimen in the past. And this is about making change consistent, right? So the destination of that change becomes habitual. So how is that simple?
It's simple in that the actual changes, I noticed a problem that I had, and I knew what I needed to do to fix it, or to make changes toward the goal that I had. And I knew that if you broke it down into the pieces, what it really is one day at a time. It's the simple act of doing it once and feeling how it feels afterward and celebrating internally the fact that you did it, even though, yeah, I regretted my decision and I didn't want to do it, but I knew the end goal was worth it. I don't want to not be able to get on the ground when I'm 75, right? I'm looking at longevity. So I'm being motivated by an intrinsic value of mine for longevity and for, even tomorrow, right? I feel better every day that I exercise rather than if I'm working on something that doesn't have an intrinsic motivator.
Is there a benefit to having that intrinsic motivator or achieving those minor wins that is not directly related? So, and what I mean by that, okay, working out. Okay, you've got better cardio by working out, right? That's a simple example. Maybe you lose weight by working out. Maybe you gain strength by working out, right? Those are directly related to the process of working out. Not to mention your whole comment about dopamine. Um, but what about the bigger picture, right? What by those little wins? It's not the working out I'm talking about. It's the fact that you have that little win every day. How is that going to help you in your career or in tech?
Well, one, it builds discipline, which is good in any industry, especially in tech. Um, Also, it builds trust in yourself. And when you can rely on yourself to do what you say you're going to do, then you can actually start setting action plans for making positive changes. And that's true with your system too, right? The more you use it, the more you test something, the more you're actually going to have trust in what that system can do. But if you don't use it and you just let it sit there, you force it to upgrade. I cannot tell you how entertained I am when we have clients that say, "We haven't touched the system since you last upgraded it 4 years ago."
Well, it makes for a great invoice.
Well, usually they don't touch it so much that it's a small invoice because they don't push it to its limits. They don't actually try to optimize performance. They just let it sit there. That said, I don't know how their user experience is on the other end, but I'm guessing it's not as well as those clients who are proactively managing, their databases and trying to get the most out of it.
This is great. Now we're into the core of if it ain't broke, don't fix it versus, incremental improvements. You've got it. We're not going to go down that path because you and I do not agree. Because if it works, especially your database, if it works, don't fucking touch it. Uh, the um, these simple wins, the trust thing, I think is important. Um, I think that you and I both know a lot of people that don't trust themselves. And it might be in this field, right? Whether it be imposter syndrome or whether it be setting boundaries. Um, how do we encourage? How do you? Would you say how important would you say the trusting of oneself is when it comes to health and tech?
My coach Brian wants to ask you that question.
Yeah, but that's not your role here.
Important is it for somebody to trust themselves in tech?
Yeah, well, in regards to health and tech, yes.
I mean, personally, I think it's exceedingly important with the caveat that it's a journey to get there. You're not going to trust yourself on day one, but you can trust yourself more on day two than you could on day one. And that's incremental improvement. It literally gives your brain dopamine to trust yourself more.
But there's a great enemy to that, right? I mean, the self-sabotage. You can be one of the best at what you do. You can know that you're one of the best at what you do. You can be affirmed by professors and experts at being the best at what you do, and then it still takes you years to even take the first step, right? Because of the self-sabotaging nature of trusting yourself.
Yeah, you can. I mean, I think most of us have been there in one way, shape, or form. And it's a hard place to be, which is one of the reasons I wanted to do this, is because I believe that it shouldn't take years. And I say that with I understand because I've been there, right? But with the right motivation, with the right reframing, with the right support and accountability, we all have the capacity to really optimize our systems and be able to sustain positive change, um, one day at a time, like one simple thing at a time.
All right, folks. Well, this has been another episode of Health and Tech from Unlimited with Exceptions and Amanda Nystrom, National Health Board Certified Health and Wellbeing Coach.